welcome. You are watching QTV and you are watching The Week in Review. I'm Ade Darami, and across the glass table from me, friend and colleague Mr. Mahmoud Mboj. Mr. Mboj, usual, welcome to the program.
Usual, glad to be here.
Great, and we have Lamin D. Sonko doing the signing. And for anybody who's watching this show for the first time, it's a simple one, and the name is a kind of a giveaway, The Week in Review. We review 10 big stories, or 10 interesting stories, let me say, that we've chosen, and we go through them in some detail. So you're next asking, what are these interesting stories? Hold on. Well, there's been the first ever West Africa Economic Summit. It took place in Abuja over the previous weekend. We were there, and it's quite an interesting one too. Here in the Gambia, National Assembly members scrutinized the Public Enterprise Committee's reports, and it was a bit of a shocker and quite a lively session at the National Assembly. And the ECOWAS mission in the Gambia, ECOMIG, the troops from various countries who are here to keep the peace. They're still here, keeping the peace all these years later. Why? And also a couple of big cases in the High Courts, and they all seem to have landed on Justice Jaite's desk. Last week, I think we dealt with the PIU shooting case. This week, he's doing the acute kidney injury case. So, again, that one is, they got the boss of one of the companies that imported these pharmaceuticals to testify. Also, did you know that Gambia is ranked 4th most peaceful country in Africa? Well, you do know now. And also, the trade minister discusses the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. And what's Gambia's role in it? Does Gambia have a role in it? Of course we do. And of course, for everybody who eats bread, excludes me, the price of bread is due to go up on the 1st of July. So these are some of the stories that we'll be getting into in some detail. So let's get things off and running, shall we? Well, I think the best place to start, first ever. Yes, I was surprised that this was the first ever West African Economic Summit. Why was I surprised? Well, because, ECOWAS was called the Economic Community of West African States. So you would have thought they would have had an economic summit before now, but they hadn't. In the 50th year of its founding, they finally got around to it. Have a look, have a listen.
Is a region rich in natural and mineral resources, producing 30% of the world's cocoa and 15% of its gold, and is a major player in oil and gas. Despite boasting a population of 428 million, with an economy valued at $600 billion, the region currently has 40% of its population living below the poverty line. This is worsened by political instability, infrastructure gaps, commodity dependence, and climate-related agricultural risks, which is quite alarming as agriculture employs 60% of the workforce in the region.
The West Africa Economic Summit is a pivotal moment forward for a region that is rich in culture, potential, and resources. The region's GDP is projected to see an increase of 4.3% by 2026-2027. However, sustained progress hinges on good governance and security, investment in youth and women, regional integration, and climate resilience. The summit is set to see to it that growth begins with harmonized trade policies between West African states and the mobilization of financial resources for critical infrastructure.
Mr. Mboj, I kind of joked in the beginning there that they finally got around to organizing such a summit, but I guess it's got to a stage where things that have happened outside of our region have forced us to kind of wake up and smell the coffee and start doing instead of just talking.
Absolutely. A similar thought process. I had to go through a similar thought process and thought, well, first I was incredulous.
So was I.
Surely there's a mistake somewhere because we're really an economic community. So I couldn't believe it, really. But all the same,
yeah,
that's it.
This
now
we've
got this.
Yeah.
So as I read more into it, apparently this is the first summit really exclusively dedicated to trade, investment, and that sort of thing, purely economics, not the politics.
Yeah,
this is what we've been doing, following I'm doing so much politics that we've not been doing the economics. So this is it, and you're right. Yeah. Recent events from 2020 COVID on, we had really seen the stark reality of our situation.
COVID, Ukraine war, where lots of countries got their grain from. Yeah.
Absolutely. So this is it. So, and then I wonder, okay, once we start implementing whatever recommendations or resolutions they come up with, what difference would it make?
Well, this is it. Because we come later on in the program. I didn't mention it, but we deal with Mada Bio being made new chairman of ECOWAS, taking over from Bola Tinubu. But you're absolutely right. What difference will it make? And I said we're kind of finally getting around to the doing and not just the talking, because there's been a lot of talk. And like you, I was more than slightly incredulous that, hang on, wasn't it called the Economic Community of West African States? Why are they having their first economic summit after 50 years? You would have thought that would have been the first summit they would have had. But of course, as you rightly said, they've always gotten involved into other things, including telling people to have term limits and so on, which is none of their business, really. But now, of course, the world situation has forced us to say, maybe we should think about the economics, how we trade with each other, how we even just cross borders. They're meant to be all this free movement of goods and people, and yet we know the reality is far, far from that.
Absolutely. And the whole idea about setting standards in politics, governance levels and that sort of thing, it will depend on if you have a consensus among the members, as it were. That's the only time, really, then this transnational body can do that. And Bola Tinubu, the outgoing, or should I say outgone?
Yes, the outgone chairman.
Yes. He said it. He said it's not simply enough to be resource rich. You must be value chain smart, isn't it? So now we are really beginning to realize this. Because look at it, within the region, only 15% of trade is intra-regional. This is quite unbelievable. When it comes to commodities, we rely so much on the primary ones, I don't know, gold,
diamond,
cocoa, diamond, oil. That sort of thing. How do you change that? How do you bring in youth unemployment so high? What, 60% under 30?
Yeah.
This is no longer an option, it is a necessity. Really, how do you do that? And even the infrastructure deficits. So there's just so much to do, even though within infrastructure, we've been seeing some movement, isn't it? Even the Senegambia Bridge, apparently is really part of that corridor that they want to create within the region, all the way to Abuja, as it were, that sort of thing. So this is it. And now we are facing new challenges like our climate vulnerability.
Indeed.
What are we going to do about that? We've contributed so little to the damage, and now we stand to pay the most price, as it were, the highest price, as it were, for this. And we know that people who've done the damage wouldn't help, or they will do it grudgingly. They will give you only a fraction of what you need. But so what do you do when you're faced with this reality? Now it's time. Necessity,
mother of invention. So what do we come up with? Because even though we say we're going to concentrate on economics, security threats. So even if we wanted to kind of divorce, or the Sahel states wanted to divorce from ECOWAS, the reality is, because of our shared borders, we have to cooperate. Because obviously, insecurity will obviously affect economics inevitably.
Absolutely. So this will be Mada Bio's challenge. We will talk about
that. But you're absolutely right.
But this is it. Within ECOWAS, we've seen in Mali, Burkina Faso, and all of these, the threat coming from there. But again, how would the body really retain credibility, given that you've got that faction, you have to work with them, it doesn't matter what. And then you've got another faction that is not that critical. It's not. It doesn't quite hate the West as much. We've seen this phenomenon of anti-Western sentiment in the Francophonie, not in Anglophone.
This is true.
And we are both within this group. So how do you maintain that balance, really? Maybe the Francophonie members would want to push a more radical agenda, but the Anglophone members wouldn't want that.
That's right.
See? So how would the body balance these two really going forward?
Excellent, and I think a balancing act is what is required. Thank you for that. Story number 2, we come here to the Gambia. National Assembly members have reviewed the Public Enterprises Committee's reports, and it was quite an interesting session at the National Assembly. This will give you a flavor.
Transparency, accountability, and good governance and efficiency in public service delivery the Public Enterprises Committee (PEC) conducted a comprehensive review of the financial statements and management of letters of 14 state-owned enterprises (SOEs) as constitutionally mandated. All 14 SOEs submitted their reports and appeared before the committee to present and defend their performance.
We really need to factor some of these things and ensure those, more especially personnel of some of these institutions that are owing these institutions and are not even with these institutions, to pay back the monies that they owe.
Mr. Mboj, in some senses, I always almost want to say to the viewer, go online and see the whole session, because it was quite a revealing session. They looked into the state-owned enterprises and they found almost across the board poor governance, downright corruption. But, you know, we keep saying, you know, people talk and so on, audited reports, and yet some of the assembly members were saying, we've been here before and we don't see the kind of stiff penalties, we don't see prosecutions that will show that we're serious about tackling these issues.
Absolutely. Honorable Lamin J. Sane, I'm the National Assembly member for Brikama South, who's also the chair of
the
PEC.
Committee. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is what he said. Financial mismanagement issues across SOEs, right? Yeah. One of them, outdated financial manual. Imagine that. Yeah, poorly defined asset disposal policy, significant amount of uncollected receivables, they call it, yes. Accumulated unpaid staff loan. The list goes on.
Yeah, it was quite a shocker. That's why I said people need to watch the whole thing and they would be shocked, I think.
Said, we want to keep these companies, these corporations, whatever you want to call them, in sort of public hands, as it were, right? But we've been shown time and time again, over and over again, that they really aren't, they're not enterprises.
They're not.
An enterprise really tries to give me profit. But now here we've all settled into kind of an enterprise, it's a kind of welfare kind of institution. They're not necessarily
they're not driven by that.
Never driven by that. But that is bad for the economy. That is not true, really. We remember back in the 80s when Sheriff Sekubasi said, the finance minister sort of was praising certain enterprises because they were bringing in profit. That was really what they were meant to do. But now we are toying again around, this is what I'm going to call it, again with performance contracts. You see, when you really don't want to go for privatization, we've been doing performance contracts for the longest time. And when you go and look online, really, and see their performance, the whole assessment of the scheme of doing things, it's not really being
the best.
It doesn't score high marks.
Quite. Really. So why do they persist with it?
Why do they persist with it? It tells you, even at the National Assembly, the members there, they were like, don't go for unchecked privatization.
And that's the point I was going to come to.
It's a bogeyman, privatization. We think that the entrepreneurs, the private sector would be like a hog, would be like a vampire. Asking for so much money, asking for so much of this. If I want high standards, I really do pay for it.
This is it. And if a public enterprise is not delivering in the public interest, why keep it in the public sector? Take the shackles off. Yeah.
And they're not even breaking even.
Yeah.
There was a few years ago, I read one statistic. Actually, we were taking public money, at least 0.6% of GDP, spending it on public enterprises. Absolutely.
To prop them up.
Absolutely. And it should be the other way around. Exactly. If it is not working, let's privatize it. We shouldn't be afraid of privatization. Just have your good regulatory body that works autonomously, and you put professional, good, competent people in there, and then you will see the results. It is often in the monitoring. We don't get it right. You see, we're not playing the game right, so we blame the game when we go wrong. But I'm not playing it well. I'm not playing the way that I'm supposed to play it. Then, when things go wrong, I go back and blame the game.
Don't blame the game. Thank you.
Blame the way you play.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. Story number 3. ECOWAS military mission in the Gambia, ECOMIG, they're still here, and they've been here since January 2017, And 8 years later, they are still here. Not only that, their mandate has been extended. Yes, really. You didn't mishear me. It's been extended. Why? Have a look, have a listen, and then we'll delve into that.
This decision was reached during the 67th Ordinary Session of the Authority of Heads of State and Government of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, which was held on 22nd June 2025 in Abuja, Nigeria. An economic intervention was deemed necessary after then-President Yahya Jammeh refused to concede power to the President-elect Adama Barrow in 2017. The mission came to the Gambia, stabilized the situation, and ensured the peaceful transfer of power and remained to support the new government during the country's democratic transition. In a final communique by the authority issued after the weekend summit, the economic contingent was applauded for its impactful support to the defense and security in the Gambia and directs the Commission to immediately take steps to readjust the mission's mandate to 24 months, from the end of their current mandate as the final extension. The authority finally directs the Commission to develop an exit strategy, including a drawdown and liquidation plan.
Mr. Mboj, let's ask the question that the man on the Banjul omnibus is asking: why are they still here? You get it everywhere you go. You hear it everywhere. I mean, I think this is no secret to say that it's a topic of conversation and has been, since I came here. I came in 2019. And even then, people were asking them, isn't it time they went? And now, 2025, they're still here.
Absolutely. It doesn't matter what anybody says. One can extrapolate a very simple thing, that this, whatever it is not a vote of confidence in our security apparatus. That much is clear. It doesn't matter what anybody says.
Yeah,
but again, we wouldn't be surprised in many ways, because we've been talking about security sector reform
for the longest.
It has been so slow.
Yeah, quite.
So we're wondering, what is holding this thing up? What is going on? I don't think we're really having an honest conversation about this, really. And here it's a very difficult area, even for journalists, because so much of it would be shrouded in secrecy, and they would invoke all kinds of reasons,
all kinds of laws. So, and in case anybody is wondering, this is it.
So
and in case anybody is wondering, it's not the kind of thing that you could get through an access to information request. Certain things are outside of that. So even if you make it, they'll tell you that state security, these sorts of things do not come under things that can be, because obviously they don't want to give information to those that might want to do harm to the country. But as you rightly said, the thing that people complain about is this snail's pace of the SSR, security sector reform. It just doesn't seem to be going anywhere, although for all I know it might be moving at quite a pace, but one doesn't get the impression that it is.
It's really interesting that they give us 24 more months. That would be after the election in 2026, so this will be mid-2027. And we also know that now there would be pressure now building up for ECOWAS to leave.
This is it.
Because of there are crises in all the
other places of the region.
They might need to deploy than being here. So now we'll see what pressure this new deadline will put on the leaders here to make the changes that we must do. You see, as a leader must have courage. There's so much that sometimes you might want to implement, but maybe a lot of people wouldn't want that at all.
But nonetheless.
But you are a leader, isn't it? A leader, what did Tolstoy say? A leader would look at the direction that humanity, that things are going. You lead your people there, you don't follow. So sometimes you take tough decisions. At the time, people may not see the virtue of it, but
like
in time...
Ataturk, for the people, despite the people.
For the people, despite the people. So without that courage, really, you are unlikely, especially in our kind of situation. We're trying to build institutions. We're trying to build things. We're still at the bottom, really. So it takes huge courage to change our attitudes and behaviors, which we need to do. So we'll see what happens here.
We'll see what happens. 24 months they've been given. Let's see. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboch. Story number 4, very different story. Mentioned at the top of the program about the couple of cases in the High Court, and I mentioned this one, the AKI case, acute kidney injury case. So this time they summoned the boss of one of the pharmaceutical companies, the company that imported the medicines that have said to have led to the deaths of these children. Have a look, have a listen.
Testifying before Justice Ibrahim Ajete at the High Court, Sohman revealed that the National Medicines Control Agency, or MCA, had approved the imported drugs. However, he said the agency did not assist in selecting the specific drugs from his Indian supplier, Maiden Pharmaceuticals. Sohman, the first defense witness, claimed over 30 years of experience in drug importation and insisted his company complied with all MCA regulations. Marena confirmed that the documents submitted by Maiden Pharmaceuticals appeared authentic at the time, though he now suspects some may have been fraudulently produced. Meanwhile, the court also recorded that families of 19 deceased children have filed a civil lawsuit against Atlantic Pharmaceuticals, the MCA, the Ministry of Health, and others, accusing them of regulatory failures.
With that exaggeration, the kind of case that sent shockwaves through parents, I can recall when it happened, that this number of children, 70 plus, had died. There were parents in our office who were looking at the medicines, the cough syrups that they were giving their children. In fact, in some cases, they were the same, and that really did cause fear. So it's a case that touched people, that shocked people. But now we've had somebody from the company that imported saying, we followed the regulations, and then we had Mr. Marina from the Medicines Control Agency saying they looked authentic, but now I'm beginning to doubt. Mr. Mboch, where are we? What's going on?
Extraordinary. Well, one thing I think we can all agree on is that there's a failure somewhere.
Indeed.
The question of locating where, because according to our report here, Mr. Schumann said that the company followed all the regulations and the like. Okay, but then the Medicines Control Agency chief executive said, well, the documents looked authentic at the time, but on reflection, as it were,
because
now,
of what has happened.
Because of what has happened.
I'm using
so
hindsight.
Fraudulent, and then which will take us to their ways of assessing the inspection and the shortcomings. Quite obviously, this one has shown something. The shortcomings in how they assess, how they inspect, and that sort of thing.
Well, this is it, and I think the thing is, Maiden Pharmaceuticals, the people who produce the medicine, pardon me, in India. One doesn't have to be a genius to have gone online to see that even within India, they had been banned from selling these medicines in some states. That should have been a red flag. So you do wonder what sort of checks they make, besides somebody presenting a piece of paper saying, because they could have done a search. Okay, made in, do they have a good record, whatever. And of course, that would have thrown up something. As I said, it should have been a red flag to say, perhaps we need to investigate a bit more. But that wasn't done.
Absolutely. So, yes, then this is why sort of our cynicism sort of comes in, doesn't it? Oh, probably somebody has been bribed, isn't it? This is normally, that's
kind of what you start to hear.
That's where we go back to the trust between government and the people
and the governed.
That matters so much.
Sure.
When it's fragile, then communication will become difficult. Your projects, because you haven't got a buy-in from the people which you need. So we need our institutions to work. It's not simply about one's integrity that matters.
Yeah, sure.
It's about competence as well in carrying out the job, isn't it?
Yeah.
So without the institutions working, we'll keep on having this all the time, really. There's no two way about it. We've been talking about this for so long. but the institutions don't work, then this is what we're going to have. So what's going to come out of this?
And that's the point, isn't it?
This
Yeah,
hearing. We do not know yet, even though we know that 19 families
have taken a civil suit.
They've taken a civil suit.
Yeah,
so we'll see what happens. And here, not only that, they must be accountable. Some people must be accountable for this, and there must be penalties. But again, what have we learned, and how have we integrated what we've learned in the way that we do assessments and the way we do things?
That is a huge question, Mr. Burge. Thank you for that. Now it takes us on to story number 5, which had many people feeling a warm glow. Why? No, it wasn't anything to do with the weather. It was the announcement that the Gambia has been ranked by a very reputable organization, I'll have you know, as the fourth most peaceful country in Africa. Yes, have a look, have a listen.
The ranking also underscores the Gambia's rising profile as a nation known for stability, safety, and peaceful coexistence within the African continent. The index, which accesses 163 countries using 23 key indicators such as safety and security, the intensity of domestic and international conflict, and levels of militarization, ranks the Gambia 55th globally in overall peace. Mauritius retained its position as the most peaceful country in Africa, followed by Botswana in second place, Namibia in third, with Sierra Leone in 5th place.
Sierra Leone in 5th place, but we'll go to Gambia, 4th place. Do we take the kind of peace and relative tranquility that we have here for granted somewhat, Mr. Mboj?
Yes, I think sort of we have. But again, we've not really known anything else. We've had a jammeh, but not quite a civil war. For instance, compared with Sierra Leone.
Yeah,
something like that. Indeed. So in many ways, we have really. We don't have any problem with religion really, and with tribes and the like. Right. Even though with some of us of a certain age, we are beginning to see these things roar their heads.
Sure.
So the price of freedom, eternal vigilance.
Yeah, indeed.
That's it. So one should never take certain things for granted.
Sure.
Really, isn't it? And when we say peace, what do we mean?
Well, this is it. and so when I looked at the Sierra Leone one, I have to say, even as a Sierra Leonean, I was shocked that Sierra Leone was 5th. And when I mentioned it in the office, people were saying, why? I said, well, for example, every election in Sierra Leone has been really violent for all of my lifetime. You know, I'm now 70 years old. So I've seen every election since independence. And I can tell you, we've barely had a peaceful one, ever. So, you know, and these are some of the things that they look at. So the 5th place ranking for Sierra Leone was something of a surprise, to the extent where, of course, even not that long ago, just over a year ago, ECOWAS were thinking of sending, you know, a mission there, you know, and people were like, we don't need it, you know, because, yes, we've had skirmishes and so on, but you know, that aside, but you're right, you say, I said, you know, eternal vigilance is what is required, because we can't start being complacent, and when we see certain things rearing their head, we need to kind of nip them in the bud and say, you know, this is not us, we're not allowing this, don't encourage it, and kind of, you know, stamp on it really to maintain this sort of thing, this sort of ranking.
Absolutely, and it all begins from identity. What is your identity as a nation, isn't it? That sort of thing. So that will help in what kind of argument I will put forward in whatever we are discussing, isn't it? Yeah, so this is it. Here are levels of militarization, as I mentioned, one of the criteria, very low. And when you consider the weapons in circulation as well, how much do you import as well? This was also part of the criteria, isn't it, really? Really very low. And I also get foreigners, people from Sierra Leone or Nigeria or anywhere else, they say, actually, when you walk in the streets, they feel relatively safe, even at night.
Yep. This is true.
This is you know what I mean? Yeah. So I've spoken to a lot of people, and they say that, for instance, the other day, even our Francis said, in Ghana, in certain areas, I wouldn't dare walk there at night. That sort of thing. Maybe we have areas like that.
Well, I was going to say,
but perhaps not that many.
There are not that many, and also you rightly say, because when the incidents do happen, and there are incidents, I always tell my reporters, don't get hysterical. It doesn't mean that there's a trend, there's an upsurge. If one person gets murdered, it doesn't mean we're all in danger of being murdered. Don't extrapolate in that way. And this is something that, when I tell people that, I think, yes, when Chinedu was killed, and I was having a discussion with somebody on Facebook, and they were saying, we should be a bit more like Senegal. And I said, are you mad? The crime rate in Senegal is far higher than it is in the Gambia. So I don't know why we kind of romanticize this thing. And as I said, we take for granted what we have here. And we're kind of aspiring to something that if we knew the facts, we wouldn't say we want to be like Senegal.
Absolutely. So do not push the moral panic button.
Indeed.
We know that we live in the media ecology where it's easy really to do that, isn't it? So really that's the danger we're living in now, because these isolated cases, which that's what they really are, they tend to be amplified.
Yeah, well, indeed.
Because
of social media and because of how small we are.
So then we think that, oh my God, there's an epidemic of murders.
When there's nothing of the sort.
That's not quite so. But let's understand what peace is. How do you keep it going? I do not know for how long. They say it is the presence of justice, not the absence of war. So there are certain conditions that would enable you to keep your peace. If you lose that, you are not going to have it. It all depends on what actions you take in the end.
Thank you. That's a brilliant point to end on. And that takes us nicely to the break. Thank you, Mr. Mboj. And after this commercial break, we will have 5 more stories, so do not go away. Join us after the break.
Q Money and Orange Money has just made money transfer easier. Now you can send money from Gambia to Senegal directly from your Q Money wallet. So what are you waiting for? Get your Q Money account now and start sending money to your friends and families through Orange Money in Senegal now. For more information, call our customer care on 133. Q Money, Sunu Kalpe. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello and welcome back. You are watching QTV and you are still watching The Week in Review, or if you just joined us, you're watching The Week in Review. I'm Adi Darami, and across the table from me I have Mahmoud Mboj, and over here I have Lamindi Sonko doing the signing. And of course, if you're joining at this point, it means you've missed 5 really good stories. But don't switch off. Why? Because we've got 5 really good stories still to come, of course. So what's the first of those 5? Well, our trade minister was nabbed by Mam Nabu when he went for the West Africa Economic Summit. And she discussed various things, including the Africa Continental Free Trade Area and Gambia's place in it. Yes, Gambia does have a place in it. Have a look, have a listen.
The African Continental Free Trade Area is one of the flagship projects of the African Union's Agenda 2063, the Africa We Want. It aims to create a single market for goods and services, promote intra-African trade, and enhance economic integration across the continent. With the agreement established in 2018 and officially operationalized in January 2021, intra-African trade has been showing significant growth. Offering a market of approximately 1.4 billion people, the overarching goal of the AfTA agreement is to increase socio-economic development, reduce poverty, and make Africa more competitive in the global economy. The Gambia ratified the agreement in 2019 and is currently implementing the AfTA strategies.
All the protocols, all the policies, all the frameworks, what we have at border restrictions, customs, non-tariff barriers, all these things make trading difficult. So we need to improve on this and trust each other and allow trade to flow across the borders. That is where we are weak, and unless we resolve that, ECOWAS will continue to struggle.
ECOWAS will continue to struggle. Mr. Mboji, we were talking about this in another context. We talked about the summit, and he was at that summit. And of course, we'll get back to ECOWAS when we discuss Madabio. But in a nutshell, we mentioned the kind of poor intra-regional trade and how that needs to be addressed. But also one of the things, Gambia ratified this in 2019, but not everybody has. And unless that happens, then the whole thing cannot come into being.
That's it, and the ratification is just the first step.
Indeed, indeed.
That's it.
Yeah.
How do you translate that into a reality?
Yeah, go on.
Let's take a look at the free movement. People who cross to either Guinea-Bissau or even just Senegal. We hear their stories.
Horror stories.
Horror stories. Yeah, yeah. Customs officers at these borders. You give them your paper, it is legitimate. They say, hey, look, here we operate by different rules.
This is it.
See, how do you break this parallel state? That's
Which
really
is
what
it is.
The issue is. So we may ratify all of these things, but then it depends on individual nations, how much of a control do they have over their state. Really?
And I gave the example when we were discussing in the office of, the fact that, when Britain was still part of the European Union, how many times I traveled across the length of the European Union, visiting every European Union country that I could, and had no problems, no hassle at all. I mean, one can only dream about such a thing in ECOWAS, never mind across Africa, and yet that is what we claim we've been trying to get to. We're signing these protocols, we're ratifying them, we're validating them, and yet the reality is nobody is seeing them being manifested in their sort of daily lives or their experiences.
And that is really the problem here, Ade. So just imagine Gambia, we said, okay, this is it. We are going to enforce this. We're going to implement with good faith as much as we can, and we're getting it right? But then imagine in Senegal or in Guinea-Bissau, they're not doing that. So you will get that reaction, and then we wouldn't. Yes. So you need a critical number of countries, really, to be simultaneously, as it were, yes, enforcing these regulations, don't we? So this is really what the issue is. ECOWAS cannot run faster than its members.
Well, this is it.
Isn't it, really? It cannot do so. It just depends on the individual countries. What are they doing? How are they strengthening their governance structures and the like, so that what is decided by central government will be implemented at that village level, the remotest place, as it were, it will be implemented. Unless we bridge that gap, it will be very difficult to make all of these protocols, these treaties, to make them, turn them into reality, lived reality, isn't it?
It really is, and it's kind of depressing, and I don't know what else to say other than we've been here before, because now we're talking about an Africa-wide agreement, and yet we, in the smaller one, the ECOWAS one, we've not been able to make that work. So what is the likelihood of getting one that actually encompasses the whole of the continent?
Absolutely. And you see, Eddie, here, we've been concentrating for such a long time on political imperatives, political this, economic, even economic now, at least, economic that. But there is a social innovation that must happen. You cannot have, who was it that reminded us, was it Gramsci, the Italian philosopher? You are never going to have political transformation without the social one. That's the embedding. We rarely touch that. When we mention stuff like culture, which is very much the social stuff, we treat it as if it's some kind of fetish. There's never that intellectual, critical. You have philosophers doing that, but it must come down to a certain level of political discussion. That critical engagement with my so-called culture, as it were. So you have that social bit. You've never had, most of us are just so conservative.
This is it.
So you've never had a kind of social innovation, I call it social revolution, as it were. That's it. That would be aligned with current imperatives. What our countries really need today, the kind of citizenship required to power us forward. I don't think we do that much.
Yes, I've been, as you know, Mr. Mboj, watching documentaries of some of these transformers, Lee Kuan Yew, Ataturk, and as Ataturk said, you know, when he brought in the state of Turkey into being and introduced a new alphabet, he asked the civil servants, how long do you think it would take to introduce this across the whole country? And they told him 6 years. Do you know how quickly they did it? 6 months. But that sort of thing is what is needed, the kind of radical, revolutionary stuff. And yes, it's not happened, and until that happens, then this will continue to be something of a noble pipe dream, but a pipe dream nonetheless.
Absolutely. And from Ataturk and Lee Kuan Yew, you learn something else. Economic development is really a radical concept. When you really think about it, you know what I mean? And when you want to introduce any radical concepts in the society, it's going to be extremely difficult. You know,
because
people like
they want
change.
to break, exactly, they want to break habits. Yeah,
exactly. So, for people who think that democracy will bring you that, that's where the profound mistake is, because democracy is really a very conservative idea. So we make the confusion that just because it's not giving me economic development, therefore I don't need it. That is false. That is terrible thinking. These are two different concepts. So I can be a firm leader to bring about the economic changes that we must. And we are relative Democrats.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. That's story number 7 before the producer starts telling me to get a move on. One that almost everybody can relate to. Here in the Gambia, a lot of people eat bread. And on the 1st of July, bread prices are due to go up. I think Mr. Mboj called it something of a cartel that exists. Have a look, have a listen.
This was the cost of production at different areas and regions in the country are not the same. We gauge and took certain information directly from the bakery operators in all these regions. When we came back, the data unit at the Competition Commission headed by Mr. Cisse, the DG, and Bas, have also gone through a process to run the data through a system and a particular formula, which was later validated by the team that is the Competition Commission, Ministry of Trade, and also the National Bakers Union.
In the Tapalapa side, having wood at this moment, it is very difficult because they are using firewood to heat their ovens. The flour is another challenge. Then you have the workers itself, because many people are not going through the process to learn it. We don't have a Tibet school whereby we can able to educate people how this process is gone.
You can increase bread, but if the increment in grams as agreed has surpassed the increment in price, it's still going to be a challenge within the sector. And what we have taken responsibilities of as leaderships in this is, if we say we are going to increase, the public should see that it is increased.
Now, you probably didn't think increasing the price of bread was rocket science, but apparently it is. Mr. Mboj, some people might be flummoxed, confused, throw their hands up in the air at what they've heard. And I deliberately chose those bits because some of them would kind of strike a note of incredulity, like you're putting the price up because of what? But that's where we are. It is going to go up on from the 1st of July.
Yes, and he said they went round talking to all stakeholders. They consulted. Collective price setting. That is really at the heart of what it means to be a cartel.
Totally.
They've just actually said it, and we all know that forming cartels that's not good for an economy at all.
Because it kills competition.
It kills competition. This is really what the issue is. That is why periodically we're going to have these standoffs, as it were, there and government. In fact, government, the Minister of Trade, have reminded them over and over again, with this cartel-like behavior, it's really not good for the economy. This is really what the issue is. That is why over the years we've been having it. And as long as the situation remains the same, we'll be having it. We'll be here again next year, year after, we'll be here again all the time. So how do they have the nows, as it were, to break this cartel?
Somehow I doubt it, but we won't dwell on this one. But I suspect we'll be here again, Mr.
They
Mboj.
call themselves unions.
Yeah,
I wonder in all these different bakeries, how their employees, how they're treating them. You see, a union really is about the working conditions of your, the employees.
Although I think they call it National Bakers Association, isn't it? But effectively, it's
behave like a union.
Yeah, quite.
That's essentially what they're doing, really, aren't they?
Yeah,
so, but this is it, and they hold us to ransom once in a while.
Because they know that people want it, they need it, and they have no alternative.
That's it. So, it's a collective price-setting mechanism, not individual bakers taking this decision. I mean, we know about these things. We've lived in societies where they're talking about these things, antitrust laws and all of this. We know about these things, and we know how it hinders really the economy. It's a cartel.
It is indeed. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. Totally in agreement on that. Story number 8. The first 39 Gambians have left for Spain. This, if you've been following anything to do with Gambia, it's between the government of Spain and the government of the Gambia. They want to start taking people in and employing them mainly in the agricultural sector. And so the first batch left this week, and a lot of comment it sparked. Have a look, have a listen.
According to officials, the initiative contract for these workers is for 3 months and is strictly limited to agricultural work as outlined in their permits, with no permission to switch to other sectors. Here is Babukar Ojuf, Minister of Trade, Industry, Regional Integration and Employment.
Today we are happy to celebrate the departure of 19 out of 39. We have another 20 to depart tomorrow, hopefully, to Barcelona. And this is for a period that is specified, a fully funded mission. I believe each and every one of you here can confirm that everything, including the visa, was free and given to you free as part of the agreement between the government of the Gambia and the Kingdom of Spain.
Mr. Mboj, a drop in the ocean, but nonetheless one to be welcomed. I did find it odd that it is kind of an odd number, 39. Because we were told that 10,000 people applied. And so this is the first batch. We use the phrase, the kind of guinea pigs, because it's a pilot scheme in a sense with the Gambia. They've done it with other countries and it seems to be working. But we know the risks that are inherent in something like this.
That's it. Did it with Senegal, Mauritania.
That's right. And Pedro Sanchez visited all these countries when he came, last year, or was it in January? Yes.
Absolutely. So for us, first question, the selection process.
They said it was rigorous, we were told.
That's what they've said, but we want to see it. Where is
how was it? Can we see a report on how it was done?
Is there an audit? You see, we need to have an audit report.
Because that's been, as I said, it's been a point of discussion, and people have said, how were these 39 chosen out of the 10,000 who allegedly applied?
Because reportedly, we've seen certain reports claiming this is alleged favoritism and then high fees. They were charging fees.
Yes.
So we've heard all of this. So one of the ways to scotch this kind of speculation is give us sort of a credible audit report. We've carried out this process. Somebody else has assessed how the way we did it, and this is the report. Until you have that already, where we've already agreed that this fragile relationship, as it were, this fragile trust, as it were, then it is really the burden of government to restore it. Only it can. People change. You are the one in charge, as it were. Change the narrative, then you would really change perceptions, possibly. So this is it. That's one angle. Of course, to the 39, this could make so much difference, to themselves and their families and all the rest of it. And perhaps should they return and then more will go, this could do well for Gambia, wouldn't it?
The unstated thing is that if the first, second and third batches return, then they will increase the numbers that they allocate to each country, because they do need them in quite significant numbers.
That's it. So to broaden the quotas and even the sectors that we cover.
That's right.
The possibilities are really endless.
Yeah, sure.
But this 39, how many could sort of abscond.
Yeah, that's the
the
danger.
possibility.
And the cynicism
danger.
in the office and online has not been encouraging. And you know, I'm trying to be optimistic and say the majority. I hope the majority come back.
And what would help? Wouldn't entirely eliminate the possibility that someone would abscond. What would help would be in the way we recruit them.
Yeah, quite.
In the selection process.
Yes,
really, that could really help. You know, you will know certain indicators, certain things that you look out for.
Indeed, yes.
You know what I mean? It minimizes,
well, that's
right,
yes.
you know, the opportunities for error.
Quite.
So, but we really do not know. Ministers, anybody, you would say whatever you say, but to us, ordinary citizens, you want to see where is the evidence. You're just making an assertion.
Quite.
You know what I mean? It is not good enough to say, I am a minister, trust me.
Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. Story number 9, and the Medicines Control Agency Task Force. Yes, we mentioned them in the story about the court case on AKI, and recently they've been out and about on the streets nabbing people who are selling drugs without proper license or authority. Have a look, have a listen.
Able to come across with 10 unauthorized medicine peddlers were arrested at the park. Also, the team visited Serekunda. Also, in Serekunda, 14 peddlers and unauthorized cosmetic product sellers were also apprehended.
As of last year, we were able to secure a total of 7 convictions, 5 of which were before the Birkama Magistrates Court. They were all convicted. They were sentenced to a fine of 50,000 each. In default, they were served 6 months in Mile 2. One individual was able to pay off the fine, and then the other 4 were to serve their custodial sentence at Mile 2. The other 2 convictions were secured from the Cardiff Magistrates Court. Those 2, they were repeated offenders.
So, Mr. Mboj, we had repeat offenders. So either the penalties are not stiff enough, or something's not quite right. But they seem to, you know, they invited the media along to see them taking this action, using the very Victorian term peddlers. But you know, people selling drugs of various types, you know, unregulated, and now they're clamping down.
Absolutely, and I don't mind the word peddlers, actually, because then I can contrast them with the big importers.
Indeed, quite.
You know what I mean? You know what they say, but in the context of drugs, police go around arresting these peddlers, as it were, but the big ones, the big fry, they're difficult to catch because, not least because they can bribe you and get away with it. So some might say that, yes, it's easy enough for you to go around catching these peddlers, but how are you doing with the big ones? Well, particularly when we put it in the context.
Well, this is it. How are you doing with the big ones? Why are they repeat offenders? There's a reason why they repeat offenders, because the penalty is a slap on the wrist.
Absolutely.
And it's worth taking the risk to do it again.
That's it. So it is a good thing that you're prosecuting these offenders. Nobody will ever deny that. But in the bigger scheme of things, how consequential are these prosecutions? As you said, we've got possibly thousands of these pharmacists and chemists, whatever you want to call them. They're all over the place. You know what I mean? So when you look at the numbers being prosecuted, they're really very small. How consistent are you?
That's it.
Are your regulations evenly, as it were, enforced?
Well, as it were, they've said that they're going to be going to other parts of the country. I guess they'll invite the media to that as well, and then we'll see what happens. Yeah.
That's it. So, fine, but you know what I mean? There's so much needs to change, really, before we have that safety, the kind of safety that we need.
This is it, and instill the confidence in the public.
That's it, to protect us from sort of unscrupulous people like that. really, from the very small to the very big.
Indeed. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. And that brings us nicely to our final story, and a very different story to story number 9. This is story number 10. Sierra Leone's president, Maada Bio, Julius Maada Bio, has been recently elected, or just nominated and accepted the post of chairman of ECOWAS. Have a look, have a listen.
I now hand over the mantle of leadership to my great friend and dear brother, His Excellency, President Julius Maada Bio of Sierra Leone. The new chairman of ECOWAS Authority, Head of States and Government. I do so with a deep sense of fulfillment and optimism for the future of West Africa. I remain confident that with the continued cooperation of all its members, ECOWAS will scale over greater heights in our collective pursuit of peace, security, stability, and prosperity.
Mr. Mboj, he's handing over something of a hot potato there to Maada Bio, despite all the fine words. ECOWAS is at a particular juncture now where, for whomever is the chairman, there's a lot on his plate.
Absolutely. Issues of unity, security, with these insurgencies all over the place, democracy and governance.
Well, this is it. When even in the chairman, the new chairman's own country, this is a very kind of contested area. Absolutely. So how ironic that he should now be chairman of the bloc. You know, it's quite a...
And really, they should be speaking truth to power. When you have such a situation, how can that be?
Well, this is it.
As it were. Yeah. So, would it be more of the same? In the short term, I just cannot see how it cannot be that.
Well, this is it. And do they bring their personality to bear? I mean, if anybody wants, they go to the Aso Rock Villa YouTube channel, you'll find Tinubu bigging up himself about his achievements in ECOWAS. But really, a lot of it doesn't stand up to the deepest of scrutiny, particularly the kind of the way that we've had 3 countries break away during his tenure. So, yeah.
What happened to the threats? We will take military action. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That, to my mind, undermine its credibility.
Indeed.
It will boast, it will talk, you know, high rhetoric and whatever you want to call it. But again, when it comes to delivering boots on the ground, you really cannot do that.
Sure.
That wouldn't work. So this is it. How would Maada Bio reset our agenda? Because now we're talking more about economics. That was why we had this first economic summit, as it were.
That's right.
So I think that politically it could be slow, but I think people will remember him if he could push the economic agenda. That is really what our priority is. That is the base for any other kind of development. The base would be the economic development, then you can do the rest.
You can do the rest. Beautiful point to end it on, Mr. Mboj. Just leave for me to thank you for your interjections throughout, and of course to you, Lamindi Sonko, for your translations and explanations to our viewers who rely on signing. And we apologize that Lamin was not here last week, unforeseen circumstances. But of course to you, the viewer, as always, thank you for watching. Until we come your way again next week. Goodbye.